Imagine checking into a motel, locking your door, and going to sleep. Now imagine someone watching you from the ceiling, or two strangers entering your room with a key while you hide in your car outside. These things actually happened. What you're about to hear are four true stories told by the people who lived them. One made international headlines, one was covered up, and two were never fully explained. If you're easily disturbed, this is your warning. Let's begin.
I'm going to tell you about the scariest night of my life. This happened to me in 2014 when I was 26 years old. I was doing a solo road trip from North Carolina to Ohio to visit my sister. I had been driving for about 8 hours and it was getting late, probably around 11 p.m. I was somewhere in rural Virginia on Route 250, driving through mountains with nothing but trees and darkness on both sides of the road. I hadn't seen another car in at least 30 minutes. I was exhausted, my eyes were getting heavy, and I knew I needed to stop and sleep. Finally, I saw a motel sign ahead. I don't remember the exact name, something like Mountaintop Motel or Mountainside Motel. It was a small L-shaped building with rooms that opened directly to the parking lot. Across the street was a tiny diner, but it was closed. There was nothing else around, just this motel in the middle of nowhere. The parking lot had maybe 3 other cars in it. Most of the rooms looked dark and empty. I pulled in and went to the office. A man was behind the desk, probably in his 50s or 60s. He had this cold demeanor. He didn't smile or welcome me. He just asked how many nights in this flat, bored voice. When I said 1 night, he told me the price and then said something that immediately made me uncomfortable. He said I had to pay in cash only, no credit cards. I asked why, and he just shrugged and said their card machine was broken. I found that really strange, because every motel I'd ever stayed at accepted credit cards. But I was so tired that I didn't want to get back in my car and drive for another hour to find a different place. I paid cash. He handed me a key with the plastic tag and pointed toward the back of the building. He didn't tell me about checkout time or where the ice machine was or anything. He just took my money and went back to watching TV behind the desk. The whole interaction felt wrong, but I couldn't put my finger on exactly why. I drove around to my room. It was at the very end of the building, far away from the office and the other cars. I unlocked the door and went inside. The smell hit me immediately. It was musty and chemical, like someone had tried to cover up something with cleaning products but failed. The carpet felt sticky under my shoes. The bedspread had burn marks on it. The bathroom was disgusting, with rust stains and a torn shower curtain. But what really freaked me out was that the room felt disturbed, like someone had been in there recently. One of the dresser drawers was slightly open. The blanket on the bed had a wrinkle near the corner, like someone had sat there. The bathroom door was halfway closed, even though I thought I had opened it fully when I first walked in. I stood in the middle of that room and suddenly all my instincts were screaming at me. Something was wrong. The cash-only payment, the isolated location of my room, the desk clerk's cold attitude, the dirty, disturbed room. Everything about this place felt dangerous. I made a decision right then. I wasn't staying in that room. I didn't care how tired I was. I walked back out to my car, got in, and locked all the doors. I sat there trying to decide what to do. Part of me felt stupid. Maybe I was just being paranoid. Maybe the room was just dirty and the clerk was just rude. But another part of me, the gut instinct part, was telling me to get out of there. I ended up moving my car to a different parking spot where I had a clear view of my room's door and the office area. I reclined my seat and decided I would try to sleep in my car for a few hours.
It wasn't comfortable, but it felt safer than being in that room. I must have dozed off because I woke up suddenly to sounds outside. I looked at my phone. It was 2:47 a.m. I stayed very still in my reclined seat and looked out my windshield. Two men were walking across the parking lot toward my room. They weren't staff. They were just regular guys in jeans and dark jackets. They were walking with purpose, heading straight for the room I had rented. They looked around briefly, checking to see if anyone was watching, but they didn't notice my car in the shadows. One of the men pulled something out of his pocket. It looked like a key. He walked up to my door and put the key in the lock. The door opened. Both men went inside. The light came on and I could see their shadows moving through the curtains. I couldn't breathe. I was frozen in terror watching these two men search the room where I was supposed to be sleeping. They were in there for maybe 30 or 40 seconds. Then they came back out looking confused and frustrated. One of them was gesturing toward the parking lot, clearly saying something about my car not being there. They had expected to find me in that room. The men stood outside for another minute talking to each other. Then they walked back toward the office and disappeared around the corner. I waited, my heart pounding so hard I thought I might pass out. After about 15 minutes, when I was sure they were gone, I carefully sat up, started my car, and drove away without turning my headlights on until I was back on the main road. I drove for another hour before I felt safe enough to stop at a different motel, a big chain hotel near a highway with lots of cars and people around. I barely slept even there. The next morning, I called the police and reported what happened. I gave them the location of the motel, described the desk clerk and the two men. They took my information and said they'd look into it, but I never heard back from them. I tried searching online for news about that motel, but I never found anything. I don't know if the police investigated. I don't know if anyone else had similar experiences there. I don't even know if the motel is still operating. But I think about that night all the time. I'm absolutely certain that desk clerk was in on it. The cash-only payment meant there would be no record of me staying there, giving me the room at the far end away from other guests. Somehow those men had a key to my room. It was all coordinated. They were targeting solo travelers, especially women. I was supposed to be asleep in that room when they came in. I don't know what they planned to do. Rob me? Assault me? Something worse? I'll never know, and I'm grateful for that. But I also know with complete certainty that my decision to trust my instincts and sleep in my car saved me from something terrible. The worst part is wondering how many other women didn't trust their instincts. How many other people checked into that motel, felt uncomfortable, but stayed anyway because they were too tired or felt like they were being paranoid. How many people didn't make it out okay? Now when I travel, I'm so much more careful. I check reviews online before stopping anywhere. I avoid isolated motels in the middle of nowhere. I trust my gut immediately when something feels off. And I tell other women, especially women traveling alone, to do the same. Your instincts exist for a reason. Listen to them. Don't talk yourself out of your own fear just because you can't rationally explain it. That night changed how I see the world. It made me realize that predators exist and they set traps for vulnerable people. But it also taught me that I have power, the power to listen to myself, to trust myself, and to protect myself. I escaped because I listened to that inner voice telling me something was wrong. If you're reading this or listening to this story, please remember it next time you're in an uncomfortable situation. Don't ignore that feeling in your gut. Don't convince yourself you're overreacting. Trust yourself. It might save your life like it saved mine.
My name is Santiago Lopez, and I used to work maintenance at the Cecil Hotel in downtown Los Angeles. What I'm about to tell you is something I'll never forget for the rest of my life. This is about what happened with Elisa Lam in February 2013. I had worked at the Cecil for about 6 years by that point. It wasn't a great job, but it paid okay, and I needed the work. The Cecil had a reputation. Everyone who worked there knew about the building's history. The suicides, the murders, the fact that serial killers had stayed there. It was a dark place with dark energy. But I needed the money, so I didn't complain. On February 19, 2013, I came into work for my shift, and the front desk manager immediately pulled me aside. He said guests were complaining about the water. Multiple rooms on different floors were reporting low water pressure and strange coloration in the water. Some guests said the water tasted weird or smelled funny. A few people had even checked out early because of it. The manager told me to go up to the roof and check the water tanks. We had 4 large cisterns up there that supplied water to the entire building. Each tank held about 1,000 gallons. I grabbed my tools and took the elevator up to the 15th floor, then climbed the stairs to access the roof. The roof access door was supposed to be locked with an alarm. If anyone opened it, the alarm would alert the front desk. But when I got there, the door was unlocked and the alarm wasn't making any sound. I remember feeling annoyed about that because it meant either someone had disabled the alarm or it was malfunctioning again. The Cecil had a lot of problems with maintenance and security because the building was so old. I pushed open the door and stepped out onto the roof. It was a clear day, sunny and warm. The roof had the 4 big water tanks sitting on a platform. I climbed up the ladder to the platform and walked over to the first tank. The metal lid was heavy, probably about 50 or 60 pounds. I noticed right away that the lid wasn't sitting flush. It was slightly tilted, like someone had moved it and didn't put it back properly. I grabbed the edge of the lid and pushed it fully open. I looked down into the tank. The water was about 3 feet from the top, and floating face up in that water was a body. I jumped back so fast I almost fell off the platform. My heart was pounding. I looked again to make sure I wasn't seeing things. But no, there was definitely a body in there. A woman, floating, her skin pale and bloated. I could see dark hair spread out around her head in the water. I climbed down from the platform as fast as I could and ran back to the stairwell. I called 911 on my cell phone, my hands shaking so bad I could barely dial. I told them there was a body in the water tank on the roof of the Cecil Hotel. The dispatcher asked me to stay on the line and make sure no one else went up there. The police arrived within 10 minutes. Firefighters came too. They went up to the roof and confirmed what I had seen. Then they had to figure out how to get the body out. They ended up having to drain the entire tank first before they could recover her. It took hours. Eventually, they cut open the side of the tank because they couldn't lift her out through the top opening. While all this was happening, I was standing in the hallway on the 15th floor with other hotel staff. Nobody could believe what was happening. We were all asking each other the same questions. How long has she been in there? How did she get in there? Who is she? Eventually, one of the managers told us that it was Elisa Lam. That was the Canadian girl who had been missing for 3 weeks, the one whose face was all over the news and on missing person posters around downtown LA, the one in that elevator video that everyone was talking about. I felt sick. Elisa Lam had been in that water tank for 19 days, almost 3 weeks, and all that time, hotel guests were using that water. They were drinking it, showering with it, brushing their teeth with it. The water that had been circulating through every faucet in the building had been flowing through a tank with a decomposing body in it. Some guests were still in the building when the news broke about what we found. I saw people running out of their rooms, horrified, some of them crying. One woman was vomiting in the hallway. Everyone who had stayed at the Cecil during those 3 weeks suddenly realized they had been using water that contained human remains. I went home that night and couldn't eat. I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about that image of her floating in the water, her skin so pale it was almost white, her hair spreading out like dark seaweed.
I kept wondering what her last moments were like. Did she realize she couldn't get out? How long did she survive in that cold water before she drowned? The next day, reporters were everywhere. News vans parked on the street, cameras pointed at the hotel entrance. The police were still investigating. They interviewed all the hotel staff, including me. They asked if I had seen anything suspicious in the weeks before I found her. They asked if I knew Elisa or had ever seen her around the hotel. I told them no to everything. I found out later from news reports that the coroner ruled her death an accidental drowning. They said she was probably having a mental health crisis because she had bipolar disorder and might not have been taking her medication. They said she somehow got onto the roof, climbed onto the water tank platform, opened the heavy lid, and got into the tank. Then she couldn't get back out and she drowned. But this explanation bothered me. I had lifted that tank lid myself. It was heavy, really heavy. Could a young woman having a mental health crisis have opened it by herself? And how did she get onto the roof in the first place, if the door was supposed to be locked and alarmed? I asked my manager about the roof door and the alarm. He got defensive and said the alarm was working. But I know what I saw. That door was unlocked and there was no alarm going off when I opened it. So either someone had disabled the alarm, or it had been broken for a while and nobody fixed it. Either way, Elisa was able to access an area she should never have been able to reach. The hotel tried to downplay everything. They sent out press releases saying they cooperated fully with the investigation and that Elisa's death was a tragic accident. They didn't want to talk about the broken security measures or the fact that guests had been using contaminated water for 3 weeks without anyone noticing something was wrong. I quit working at the Cecil Hotel about 2 months after I found Elisa. I couldn't be in that building anymore. Every time I walked through those hallways, I thought about her. Every time I saw the elevators, I thought about that video of her acting so strangely, looking scared, waving her hands around like she was trying to communicate with someone or something. People online came up with all these theories. Some said it was murder. Some said it was supernatural. Some said the elevator video showed her being followed by a ghost or demon. But I think the truth is sadder and simpler. I think Elisa was a young woman struggling with mental illness. I think she stopped taking her medication. I think she had a crisis and somehow made it to the roof through a door that should have been locked but wasn't. I think she got into that water tank and couldn't get out. And I think she died alone and scared while dozens of people were sleeping in rooms just below her, completely unaware. The failure wasn't supernatural, it was human. The hotel failed to properly secure the roof. Someone failed to maintain the alarm system. Elisa's mental health support system failed her while she was traveling alone. All these little failures added up to a tragedy that should never have happened. I still have nightmares sometimes of opening that tank lid and seeing her there. I think about how if the alarm had been working, she never would have been able to access the roof. I think about how if someone had checked the water tanks earlier when guests started complaining, maybe she would have been found earlier. I think about all the what-ifs that haunt this case. The Cecil Hotel closed for renovations in 2017. As far as I know, it still hasn't reopened. Part of me hopes it never does. That building has too much darkness in it, too much death, too much tragedy. Elisa Lam deserved better. She deserved to be safe. She deserved to finish her trip and go home to her family. Instead, she became one more name added to the Cecil Hotel's list of victims, and I'm the person who found her. That's something I'll carry with me for the rest of my life.
I stayed at a place called the Manor House Motel in Aurora, Colorado, back in 1989. I was 24 years old at the time, driving cross-country to start a new job in California. I needed a cheap place to crash for the night, and this motel on Colfax Avenue looked decent enough from the outside. Simple one-story brick building, orange doors, a blinking vacancy sign. Nothing fancy, but clean-looking. When I checked in, the owner was this middle-aged guy named Gerald. He seemed friendly enough, asked me where I was headed, made small talk about the weather. He gave me a room toward the middle of the building and told me checkout was at 11 a.m. Normal interaction. Nothing weird at all. My room was basic. A bed, small TV, bathroom, nothing special. I remember the ceiling had these metal ventilation grates, probably 3 or 4 of them scattered around the room. I didn't think anything of them at the time. They just looked like normal air vents. I took a shower, watched some TV, and went to bed around 10 p.m. I was exhausted from driving all day. But I woke up around 2 a.m. because I heard something strange. It sounded like creaking, like someone walking on old floorboards, but the sound was coming from above me, from the ceiling. I stared up at the dark ceiling and listened. The creaking happened, then stop, then happen again a few minutes later in a different part of the room. I told myself it was just the building settling, or maybe pipes in the attic. Old buildings make noise, right? But something about it felt wrong. The creaking seemed too deliberate, too rhythmic, like footsteps. I got up and turned on the lamp. I walked around the room, looking up at the ceiling, trying to figure out where the sound was coming from. That's when I noticed something that made my skin crawl. One of the ventilation grates in the ceiling, the one directly above the bed, looked different than the others. When I stood on the bed and looked closely at it, I could see that there were tiny scratches around the edges of the frame, like it had been removed and put back multiple times. And when I looked through the slats at an angle, I swear I saw darkness beyond it that was deeper than it should be, like there was open space up there. I couldn't sleep after that. I kept staring at that vent, feeling like someone might be looking down at me. I ended up sleeping in my car in the parking lot for the rest of the night. In the morning, I checked out early and never thought much about it again. It was just a creepy experience that I pushed out of my mind. But then, 27 years later, in 2016, I was reading the New Yorker magazine and I saw an article titled "The Voyeur's Motel." My blood went cold as I read it. It was about the Manor House Motel, about Gerald Foos, the owner, who checked me in that night, about how he had built a secret viewing platform in the attic and spent decades watching guests through fake ceiling vents. For 30 years. I felt sick reading it. I immediately called my wife and told her about the article. I tried to remember everything about that night. I had taken a shower. I had changed clothes. I had been in that room for hours before I went to sleep. Had he been up there watching me the whole time? Was that creaking sound I heard him moving around in the attic? The worst part was reading that his wife knew about it, that she helped him, that they would both go up into that attic together. The violation, I felt, was overwhelming. I trusted that when I closed that motel room door, I had privacy. I had believed I was alone, but I wasn't. Someone had been lying in the dark just a few feet above me, watching through those vents, taking notes. The article said Foos claimed he was conducting research on human behavior. He compared himself to a scientist, but there's nothing scientific about violating people's privacy like that. There's nothing academic about being a predator. He stole something from every person who stayed in those rooms. He stole our sense of safety and dignity. I found out later that Foos had sold the motel in 1995, years after I stayed there. The building was eventually demolished. There's nothing there now, but I still think about that night sometimes. I think about that creaking sound. I think about that scratched ventilation grate, and I wonder how many other people stayed at the Manor House Motel and heard strange noises but convinced themselves it was nothing.
When the Netflix documentary Voyeur came out in 2017, I watched it, even though it made me feel horrible. I wanted to see Foos's face and hear him try to justify what he did. In the documentary, he still didn't seem to understand why people were so angry with him. He kept saying he never touched anyone, that he just watched, like that made it okay. But it's not okay. What he did to me and to hundreds of other people was a violation that I still carry with me. Every time I stay in a hotel or motel now, I check the ceiling vents. I look for scratches or signs they've been removed. I listen for creaking sounds. I can't help it. Gerald Foos took away my ability to feel completely safe in those spaces. I never filed a police report or lawsuit. By the time the story came out, the statute of limitations had passed, and Foos couldn't be prosecuted. Part of me wishes I had trusted my instincts that night and complained to the police, but I was young and tired, and I talked myself out of it. I told myself I was being paranoid. That's the lesson I learned. Trust your instincts. If something feels wrong, it probably is. Don't talk yourself out of your own gut feelings just because you can't immediately explain them. That creaking sound wasn't the building settling. Those scratches on the vent weren't normal wear and tear. My instincts were telling me someone was watching, and they were right.
I work as a house person at a hotel. It's basically a mix of maintenance and housekeeping. I fix things in guest rooms, bring supplies, keep the pool area clean, stuff like that. This story is about something that happened to me during a night shift in the summer of 2023. I've never been able to explain what I saw, and honestly, I'm not sure I want to. Our hotel hired a new front desk worker that summer. I'll call her Brianna to protect her privacy. She was working the night shifts, which meant my schedule got changed so I could help her since she was new. Night shifts at our hotel are usually dead quiet, especially on weekdays. We'd go hours without a single check-in. It was a Wednesday night, which for us meant basically no guests coming or going. Me and Brianna spent most of the evening just chatting at the front desk while I did small tasks around the building. Around 8 p.m., I went to restock the pool area with clean towels. To get into our pool, you need a key. Guests have to fill out a form agreeing to the rules, and then we give them a pool key. Staff members like me have master keys that open pretty much everything in the hotel. I unlocked the pool door and went inside. The pool area has a storage room where we keep towels, chlorine, cleaning supplies, all that stuff. I opened the storage room and grabbed an armful of towels because I noticed the rack by the pool was almost empty. As I was bending down to grab one more towel from the bottom shelf, I heard a loud splash behind me. I actually jumped and dropped all the towels I was holding because the sound startled me so badly. I rushed back out to the pool area and saw one of our life preservers floating in the water. You know those orange ring floaties with the white rope? One of those was bobbing in the middle of the pool. This was bizarre because there was no way that life preserver could have fallen into the pool by itself. They're stored on hooks on the wall, nowhere near the water. Someone would have had to physically take it off the hook and throw it into the pool. But I was alone in there. The door had been locked. Nobody else was in the pool area. I looked around, checking the corners, checking behind the storage room door, looking for any sign that someone had snuck in, but there was nobody. Just me and this life preserver floating in the pool like someone had just thrown it in seconds ago. I fished the life preserver out of the water and hung it back on its hook. I quickly finished putting out the towels and got out of there. I felt uneasy, but I didn't want to overreact.
Maybe the life preserver had been sitting on the edge of something and vibrations from me walking around caused it to fall. Maybe I had bumped something without realizing it. I tried to rationalize it. When I got back to the front desk, Brianna asked if anyone had gone to the pool. I said no, and she confirmed that she hadn't given out any pool keys. I didn't mention the life preserver incident because she was new and I didn't want her to think I was crazy or trying to freak her out. The rest of the evening was quiet until around 9:30 p.m. I grabbed a maintenance request slip from the front desk. Someone from housekeeping earlier in the day had noted that the toilet in room 324 wasn't working properly. Brianna told me the room was empty. The guest wasn't checking in until Friday, so I could take my time fixing it. I grabbed my tools and went up to the 3rd floor. Room 324 was toward the end of the hallway. I used my master key to let myself in. The layout of our rooms is pretty standard. When you open the door, the bathroom is immediately to your right. If you walk straight past the bathroom, you'll see 2 beds on the right side of the room. I went straight to the bathroom and lifted the toilet lid to see what the problem was. I started adjusting the valves and checking the flapper inside the tank to figure out why it wasn't flushing properly. The room was quiet except for the sound of my tools and the water in the toilet. Then suddenly, I felt the temperature drop. I'm not talking about a gradual cooling. I mean, it dropped fast, like someone had opened a freezer door. I stopped what I was doing and just stood there, feeling the hairs on my arms slowly rising up. I looked around the bathroom, checking for vents that might be letting in cold air. But then I realized it was summer, a warm summer night. The AC in the room wasn't even running that hard. What could possibly make the temperature drop like that? As soon as I had that thought, the cold feeling went away. The air returned to normal temperature and the hairs on my arms went back down. I checked the thermostat in the room and it read 68 degrees, which was normal. But I was definitely on edge now. The pool incident and now this weird temperature drop? Something felt off. I went back into the bathroom and kept working on the toilet. I just wanted to fix it and get out. After a couple minutes, I heard the toilet start flushing again. The water refilled the tank. I felt relieved. Finally, I could leave. But then, over the sound of the water refilling, I heard a loud thump from somewhere in the room outside the bathroom. I froze completely. My heart started racing. The cold feeling came back, even stronger this time. I put the lid back on the toilet and slowly walked out of the bathroom. I turned my head to the right to look at the beds. The phone on the nightstand between the 2 beds was dangling off the hook, swinging back and forth like someone had just knocked it off. But I wasn't looking at the phone. I was looking at what was past the phone. In the corner of the room, right next to the bed, there was a figure standing there. A really tall figure, completely still. I felt like I couldn't breathe. I was frozen in the doorway of the bathroom staring at this thing. I couldn't see any features on it at all. It was just a completely black silhouette against the dim room, like a shadow in the shape of a person. Like when you unlock a character in a video game and they're just a dark outline before the model loads in. That's exactly what it looked like. The figure stood so still that I couldn't hear any sound coming from it. No breathing, no movement, nothing. For what felt like forever, we just stared at each other. Or at least I stared at it. I don't know if it was looking at me because I couldn't see eyes or a face or anything. Then, I swear to God, it moved. I don't know which part of it moved. Maybe an arm, maybe it shifted its weight. I couldn't tell. But I definitely saw the silhouette change position slightly. That was enough for me. I bolted for the door. I practically ran across that room, flung the door open so fast I almost hit myself in the face with it, and slammed it shut behind me. I rushed back down to the first floor where Brianna was at the front desk. I was breathing hard and probably looked crazy. I told her I was clocking out for the night. She looked confused because my shift wasn't over for another 2 hours, but I didn't care. I said goodbye and left the hotel immediately. I sat in my car in the parking lot for a few minutes, trying to calm down before I could drive home. The whole way home, my mind was racing. What was that thing in room 324? Was it even real? Could it have been a shadow cast by something outside? But the curtains were closed, and the room was too dim for shadows to form like that. Could it have been a person? But the room was supposed to be empty, and besides, what I saw didn't look like a normal person. It was too tall, too dark, too still. I connected the pool incident to what happened in room 324. The life preserver being thrown in the water when nobody was there, the temperature drops, the phone being knocked off the hook, the figure in the corner, it all felt related somehow, like something in that hotel was trying to get my attention or scare me. I tried to rationalize everything. Maybe my mind was playing tricks on me because I was tired. Maybe the life preserver incident made me paranoid and I started seeing things that weren't there. Maybe the figure in the room was just a coat hanging in the corner and my scared brain turned it into something threatening. I wanted to believe all of that. But here's what I can't explain. The next day, I called the hotel to let them know I couldn't come in for my next shift. I talked to the day manager and told him I wasn't feeling well. He said that was fine, but then he mentioned something that made my blood run cold. He said that housekeeping had gone into room 324 that morning to prepare it for the guests checking in Friday. They found the toilet lid off and sitting on the floor next to the toilet.
If these true motel horror stories kept you on edge, but first, smash that subscribe button and hit the bell so you never miss terrifying true stories like these. Drop a comment below with your own scary hotel experience. I read every single one, and yours might be featured next. Click that video on screen now for more true horror. Stay safe out there.